HR leaders, what's on your mind these days? Is it AI? Is it the economy? The talent market? Remote work? Retention? DEI? Pay transparency? New laws? Our 2024 Workplace Trends Report outlines how HR leaders are thinking about these challenges and what they believe will help their organizations overcome them. Want to find out what they said? Head on over to peoplemanagingpeople.com/Workplace Trends 2024 and download the report to find out.
I think in terms of to be a leader, there's lots of companies that have said, well, everybody's a leader. We want to make everybody in our organization leaders. Big consultancies do this a lot. But I don't think everybody should be a leader. So be like the leaders, the people that inspire you to go above and beyond where you really are now, go try something new, be a bit brave, learn something, take control or ownership of something.
Welcome to the People Managing People podcast. We're on a mission to build a better world of work and to help you build happy and productive workplaces. I'm your host, Tim Reitzma, and today on the show, Iain Montgomery and I will unpack the idea of preparing rather than repairing when it comes to leading teams, gathering customer insights, and of course, workplace culture. So stay tuned. Hey, Iain, welcome to the People Managing People podcast. It's so good to have you here, and I'm excited for our conversation today. I mean, we're going to dive into, I think it's an interesting conversation about prepare rather than repair. I mean, that goes for, so many different aspects of life, but we're going to bring it to the place of leadership, workplace culture, and use it in that spin. But before we get going, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience? Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about what you're up to right now.
Yeah, so my name's Iain Montgomery. I've spent the last 10 years helping mostly big companies do new things, so design, launch new products, service ventures and the like. And I was originally an accountant, really not a very good one. Found my way into consultancy, worked with a great little company called Market Gravity. Grew with them, originally from the UK, hence the accent. Moved to the US 8 years ago now, and Canada 4 years after that. Worked for Deloitte for a couple of years after they bought my business. And then for the last couple of years, I've been building my own slightly different innovation studio, one where I don't really want to hire any full-time employees. So that's called Now or Never. Work with all sorts of weird and wonderful businesses, learning about their customers, coming up with new ideas and finding ways to make them real.
Well, that's how we met. We met a couple companies ago that I worked at, and you came in to talk to us about innovation. And I think I'd give our audience a disservice if I didn't talk a little bit about your LinkedIn tagline, because it gave me a good laugh and also got me super curious. It's agitating stodgy corporate environments for a living. What does that mean?
It's a great question. So big companies are designed to do two things: maximize profit, minimize risk, which means anything new and different is inherently risky, and it doesn't necessarily generate profit right away. So I found that a lot of the places where I get to go and work, and I work with great clients, is the people are lovely, but the culture that sits around it has just become kind of stodgy and stale. And I get to go in and do my thing and then go talk to their customers, go be a bit provocative, hopefully build up some confidence behind new ideas and where they might take them. And 9 times out of 10, it goes really well, and we get to do something great together, meet a lot of awesome people, and I enjoy working with them. I like to think they enjoy working with me. Maybe the agitating thing is, I don't know, it definitely upsets a few people. And there's certain sometimes when I say things on LinkedIn, I'm very limited to speaking my mind, and I don't tend to bite my tongue very well. And sometimes my mouth definitely works faster than my brain. Maybe that's where the agitating side of it came from, because not everybody likes it. So yeah, a lot of corporate environments can be quite comfortable and safe, and the only way you get them to sort of stay fresh or going into the future is a bit of an agitator.
Yeah, I see that. And I'm just recalling so many moments of my career being involved in large organizations, from healthcare to manufacturing. And, trying to drive change, great innovation ideas come about, but they're, at least from my experience, are often put on the back burner because of the change. People are
Mhm.
afraid of the change. People are afraid to lose their budgets. People are afraid, to experience something that's different, that's out of their comfort zone.
It's kind of like this idea everyone feels. I like to play this idea that people feel is in like the UK, if you want to go and do something new and different, it's often easier in a big company because you're not going to get fired for trying something new. You might get moved to a slightly more boring position, but that's okay.
Mhm.
You can still pay the mortgage. Most people, when they're in that position to drive change, they tend to have a partner. They might have young children. They've probably got an expensive mortgage. Whereas in the US, it's really easy to get fired. They celebrate failure a bit differently there, but it still make people a bit slower and a bit more stale.
Mhm.
And then Canada's like the worst of both worlds, where it's easy to get fired, but if you do fail, you're sort of like known as a failure, which is
Mm.
never a nice thing. But I think that's what makes sometimes those organizations find it hard to change, is that there's a lot of people who have been good at something, they've gotten to where they've got to, but they just got a bit too comfortable.
Yeah. So you're in that unique position as an external who gets to come in and like you agitate, stir it, mix it up, ask questions that maybe are on people's minds, but people are afraid to ask. And
Yeah,
you're kind of coming in as that neutral party and just getting curious but calling it for what it is. I love it.
I've never had a real job. It's probably the best way of putting it. I had a real job as an accountant for a year and I really hated it. So
I love it. So you know what you don't like, and then you thought, hey, I'm just going to go and design my own career,
yeah,
and I love that. So, the next couple questions, again, for those who listen to the People Managing People podcast, I've been asking these as kind of standard questions because I'm always curious about people's opinions and people's thoughts. But what does it mean to be a leader in the eyes of Iain?
it's a really good question. I think in terms of to be a leader, there's lots of companies that have said, well, everybody's a leader. We want to make everybody in our organization leaders. Big consultancies do this a lot. But I don't think everybody should be a leader. So like the leaders are the people that inspire you to go above and beyond where you really are now, go try something new, be a bit brave, learn something, take control or ownership of something. I always look back to one of the guys that was one of the co-founders of the business I used to work at, Market Gravity. And when I joined that business, I had no idea what I was doing. I blagged my way through an interview process, but I got myself into this company where the two guys who ran it were very different individuals. They clearly had a really great working relationship, but they were very different people. But their leadership styles were go away and figure it out. We're not going to stop you. Don't ask permission. Go get on with it. And when you need help, tell me the help you need. They'll help you. And I admire people who are leaders like that because they give people the space to go learn, but they're also like there with their helping hand to pick you up or help you cross something when you get stuck. So to me, like I think a leader is the person that can inspire that in other people to go do things that they wouldn't necessarily be able to do by themselves.
Yeah, somebody who's not just giving you a list of tasks to go and do, which often, in my past looking at job descriptions, it's just, oh, here's the tasks that you're going to be doing. It's like, I don't think I'm going to be inspired by a leader or inspired by an organization, but it's somebody who gives you that permission and permission to go and fail and permission to go and explore and be here to help from that mentor and that coach perspective. I love that.
I definitely caused them headaches over the years where it was like me going off and doing something. But more often than not, I think I had like better returns than like caused like complete chaos. And when I did make a mess, they were pretty good at teaching me how to clean it up as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool in the leader as well.
Yeah, it's not just just go off in your own world and figure things out. And it's like I'm going to create a whole new business line of merchandise. It's like, no, that's not our business. So let's not do that. But that's just a made up example. But I think a leader is somebody who kind of shows you where the goalposts are and allows you to run the plays to get to that end line, to get to that goal.
Yeah. They
Absolutely.
were really good at the time. It's like, I wanted to go open a business in Canada. They just went, call us when you need help, go do it. It's like, oh, crap, I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't know how to incorporate a business none of the day, to be honest. But like all the basic things, and my head was like, well, I'll just go win some work then. That's the first step to building a business. And they get me the help that I need to go do that. And then when I'd won some work, I was like, I need some people to deliver this now. Can I hire this guy? And they were like, yeah, sure. Okay. Can I get an office? Yeah. Can I have your bank details to pay the landlord? Yeah. And suddenly, before we knew it, like, there was this little thing emerging. We had sales coming in. We had people flying over from the UK, and there was, in hindsight, when I look back at it, like I could not have done that all alone, but it would never have happened without me. And to me, that was like showed how good that leadership was. Is that they just let me get on with it and gave me the help when I needed it and didn't interfere.
I love it. Yeah, I could think of a few warm places I'd love to go and set up an office right now, sitting in a rainy day here in Vancouver, British Columbia. And so I love that. And I think it plays well into the next question, which is, when you hear the phrase, how are we going to build a better world of work? Or what does it mean to build a better world of work? What comes to mind?
That's a really good question. So like work has always been, even today, like we talk about coming out of the pandemic, and people say back to work because they still associate work with being in an office, 9 to 5, behind a desk. But I think like building like that future world of work is like there's people out there changing what work really means. There's less people doing 9 to 5 jobs. There's more people moving towards these different systems. Like, I don't know what work will really be into the future because I don't know if that's what I think we're still reframing what that really means. Like I know a lot of people who've just gone, I do not want to do this corporate job anymore. But they were really good in their corporate job. They earned a lot of money in their corporate job. They were well respected in their corporate job. And now they're going, well, I'm still really good at that, but like that's not the only thing I want to do. I want to have more variety. I want to work on my own terms. I don't want to have a boss. So I think that the world of work is like changing faster now than it has for the past 50, 60 years. Just because I don't really know what work is anymore. It's not a very helpful answer, is it?
Well, I think there's a lot of questions packed in there, right? When we think about building a better world of work, yeah, there is a lot packed in there because we just don't know what it's going to take. Like you said, there's people who are in great, positions, whether it's a corporate or small business, who are thinking, oh, maybe I do want some variety. Maybe I want to go freelance. How do I do that? And I think the world of work right now is just so open to lots of different opportunities.
So much of work was just like go do your job, tick the boxes, fill out your balance scorecard at the end of the year.
Yeah,
we'll work out how you performed, and then we'll give you a bonus. I'm already being biased and placing think of world of work as an office job. So this is the trap we fall into. We think of work as a job at an office and not all the other jobs that people actually do. But I think that the idea of what I do for a living, how I do it, how I train for it is like changing. I'm really interested in the sort of how people will learn for their careers, change what they do through their careers, because it's no longer about going to school, finishing at 16, 18, 21, whatever age you go to school through the different levels of education, and then preparing you for a job in the workforce. Like it used to be that you went to school, you did well at maths, okay, you go study business at university, become an accountant, spend 40 years in accounting, hopefully make partner at the end of it, retire quite nicely and live a happy life. Whereas like people don't do that in the same way anymore.
No, it's changing dramatically. It's shifting. There's a lot more opportunity for people to just even jump out of high school and into a career, or find an online program or online course and study something to become an expert in that one thing, instead of devoting another 2 to 4 to 6 years of your life into an aspect of business. Sure, if you want to become a doctor, you can't just take a online course and become a doctor. I'm sure some people have tried, but it's I frown against that. But yeah, when we think about building a better world of work, is how do we build those organizations that allow for learning opportunities? Hey, I'm interested in, I don't know, pick whatever subject you're interested in. Okay, cool. Go learn that. because I think, it'll benefit you, it'll benefit their organization. So, it's moving away from, oh, here's your budget. Here's, what are the 3 objectives you want to learn out of this course? And, at the end of the course, submit your grades so we can see if it's actually adding value to our organization. Instead, it's going, sure. No, I think, taking that obscure writing course would probably benefit you in how you communicate. So go for it.
I think that the future work will be much more driven by how corporate entities drive the changing nature of education. Thought about this a lot lately, so I've been working on an education not-for-profit project. But like, how much of what you learned in school has been relevant to what you do today? Probably not very much. I don't remember a lot. Like, I remember sitting in a chemistry lab and playing with a Bunsen burner, and I don't remember a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think of like the things that I really remember learning from were all when I was sort of left to myself. Like, go to university, like English university is a joke. You do 6 hours. Well, if you do a business studies course in English universities, it's 6 hours of lectures a week, maybe the odd tutorial here and there. Go read some books and write some papers. Like, you don't learn how to enter the world of business from that. Okay, maybe you'll learn how to be a consultant, but the less said about that, the better. Like, the whole way that we teach kids is a bit broken. But it's like, you sort of look back at it when you hit your mid-30s, like, oh, I wish I'd learned that at school. And there's sometimes when I was not paying attention and someone was trying to teach me that, and I was not an engaged student. But there's other times where it's like, how we teach people to go to do things that are relevant for the modern world, we don't do. It's all still based in the sort of 1940s and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's got to change.
It's going to change. I think it is changing. I think, I'm enrolled in this online program called Business Made Simple, put on by Donald Miller and the crew at StoryBrand. And I love it. It's super practical. It's a heck of a lot cheaper than a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. And it's practical. It's things that I'm bringing into my business here at People Managing People. And it's, so that's a little plug for Business Made Simple, but it's changing, right? The world of work, how we build a better world of work is changing. And yeah, I think it's either the corporates are going to change, corporate organizations, or there's going to be a groundswell of small, medium businesses that are doing extremely well, maybe privately owned. So we're not just focused on shareholder value and able to flex and devote time to our people. And I think that's a great kind of jumping off point. At the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned that we're going to prepare rather than repair. And I think that we're in this state in our cultures and our workforces. Like you said, our workplaces have evolved so fast over the last couple of years. And I think we're in this state of, in some cases, just repairing. Like, oh, shoot, we thought we had a great workplace culture, but our attrition rate is as high as it's ever been. What do I do? So maybe let's define that. What does it mean? I know when we were in a pre-call, we were talking about prepare rather than repair. So in your world, what does that mean?
It's a line that I heard on a history podcast. I've forgotten the name of the history professor. I must look this up. But he was talking about how in the mini ice age in the 17th century, some countries came out of it better than others. And it wasn't necessarily they deliberately prepared, but certain conditions made them more resilient to deal with that mini ice age, and they came out of it in a better place. And then he used the line of, it's better to prepare than repair. So we've all heard the stories of how Kodak invented digital photography and Blockbuster knew about streaming, and a load of companies know about the change that's going to come, but they can't get themselves off this addiction to the way that they currently make money today. But the bare minimum, they have to be prepared for how the world might change, versus by the time they try and repair, it's too late. The platform's already burning. Someone else who is much more well capitalized is going and building something that you can't compete with. I was thinking about this the other day. It was like, there's a lot of people who are heads of innovation in big companies, and their innovation budget is less than a seed round that some of the startups who are coming to that lunch are being funded with. You haven't got a hope at that point. I don't want to be pessimistic, but like, look, like big companies who are generating a lot of cash should be going and looking at, well, how is the world going to change? What might impact us, and where do we go from here? The irony is the companies that are really good about that, these are probably the most stodgy, old-fashioned organizations in the world, but they're insurance companies. The way they work today is their ways of working in their corporate lines of their business is still very stodgy, traditional, paper-based, old-fashioned. But their job is literally to be out there thinking about how the world might change and how they don't get caught short when it does. I think like that's the sort of mentality that most organizations have to take. It doesn't mean they have to act, but at least if they're better prepared for how the world might change when it does, they're prepared for it.
Yeah, and that's just one aspect of an organization from a prepare rather than repair, is that the innovation side. I worked for quite a large company, and the innovation budget was just a small percentage of total revenue, like just a tiny, less than 1%. It was just let's maintain the current the current product offering, and let's not add anything into not too much into that budget. And out of hundreds and hundreds of employees, the innovation team was, I think, 3 people, just really small. And but even thinking about from just the innovation side, but also from a culture and a corporate culture side, and you think of that corporate culture or that environment, um, organizations that aren't prepared for that future of work are really just repairing. I mean, you just got to go to LinkedIn and spend 10 minutes on LinkedIn, and there's still so much talk about the great resignation and people leaving. And, there's a lot right now. I was reading about, financial wellness of people. And so there's a lot of turmoil even in the job market. And, a friend of mine I had lunch with recently, he was, I can't repeat exactly what he said, but he was saying it's just the workforce is a mess right now.
Mhm.
There's so much changeover going on, and they're having trouble finding people, and they're finding great people, and they're getting offer letters every other day, and yeah, if you get caught in that, just kind of sitting back, you're going to be in trouble.
I think there's a lot of companies that don't really know where they're going, or they're a bit scared to articulate how the world might change.
Mhm.
A few years ago, it was always really trendy of this is a good money maker for big consultancies, but it was the X of the future. What's the grocery store of the future? What's the airport of the future? What's the yada, yada, yada of the future? And there was a load of really good thinking done in those projects, like the workplace of the future.
Mhm.
But a lot of it was driven by technology, not people. So it was like, here's the tech that could come along, and how would we apply this technology to a workplace or to a thing to make it the thing of the future? And I never thought about the psychology of it. Like, actually, how do people feel about where the world is going, where their work is going? And working on a thing now about like the subway station of the future. It's fascinating because a big part of public transit systems has been the 9 to 5 commute. Rush hour in the morning, rush hour in the evening. It is what it is. They make some money, turn over some people during the course of the day, and that's public transit. In a world where we're not always going to work remotely, still going to be time in physical spaces, but the time you use the system has changed. So the needs of those pieces of infrastructure have changed. Not a lot of people have thought about that. So if you don't think about it, you then just keep building similar versions of the same thing that you've always had. And then when the problem does come, it's pretty expensive. I think that's the whole sort of idea behind like it's better to prepare than repair.
Yeah, you either quickly pivot and adjust really quick, but you've got to have deep budgets and a lot of resources behind you to do that, or take that moment and think like really, most companies that I've been a part of have strategic planning days or weeks, and it's okay, where are we going today and tomorrow and that next month and then the month after? But let's actually think about that vision statement for the organization and think about, does this still make sense? What are we doing to make sure that we, if we're, if we have a crazy vision to, I don't know, make sure everyone feels connected even while they're working remote, what are we doing? Like, technology sure is one aspect, but there's other aspects to it as well. But I think so often we get caught in this place of like, okay, we need to MVP, we need to get something out quick, and then we just push it forward and fix it later. Like I've
Hmm.
heard that and I've seen it and I've been part of it. And whether that's just internal systems and you name it, it's just, oh, we'll just get it out and then fix it later. But then you got to hire a team of people to go and fix it later. So, have you come across this in your work? Is this still a common nomenclature? I think this is probably a good part of your business, but what are some examples that if you can share?
So I was reading an old HBR article the other day, and it was maybe 2013, and it said, don't ever use the term proof of concept, experiment. I think it might have said, don't say MVP either. It was like, said, if you want to do innovation properly, you could use the phrase mini test. But like, mini test doesn't, if I said I'm doing mini tests, it would make me sound like a bit of an idiot. It's not very like clever sounding language, but the idea was like, you're just continuously testing things as you go through. And like, if you say mini test, failures is almost a better option because you've learned what doesn't work versus trying to prove what does. So the thing like MVP still gives me shivers because I think about it in like old world consulting would be design a thing, show the potential of this beautiful and amazing thing, or this is where the business would go, and then strip out all the interesting things out of it to make it viable. So people like talking about like viability, desirability, feasibility. I always get viability and feasibility confused, so I think about lovability, doability, and practicability. What ended up happening was we went, well, something could be really lovable to a customer, but because it's quite hard to do, we wouldn't do it. So you could score something 10 for lovability, but 2 for doability, and it ends up in the bin. If something's like 5 for lovability, but 10 for doability, something we can do really easy, but nobody really wants it, and that gets prioritized. So many minimal viable products were like, it's the minimal thing you could build, but nobody wants it. But the problem was everything we built went over budget because we like could build like a thing, spent a load of money. I'm thinking of one that there's an example. It's still out there as a product today, but it's like, and I'm sure the team who was behind it, none of them are there anyway. But we're working with an insurance investments pensions company called Aegon in the UK. And the whole idea was building a digital retirement platform for them because the problem was people who were aged 50-ish did not have enough money to be ready for it. So we went out and designed this like amazing product. A certain big consulting company, won't mention names, but they came in and we went to do the build for it and basically stripped out all the interesting features. Somehow we all agreed that, well, that's the MVP, we'll go build this thing. The build took months and months and months. It might be like 2 years to actually build something and get it out. By the time it was out in market, it was out of date. Nobody really wanted it. The CMO moved on to another job. The CEO of the business changed, and he didn't really want to be associated with this old thing that it wasn't his legacy, it was somebody else's, and it wasn't working. The right answer would have been allow a bit more money into it and keep going. But because it wasn't theirs, they just killed it and went back to square one again. I've seen that so many times where like the minimal viable product was never viable. It was never minimal. It was barely a product. It took so long and so much money that the world changed, and then they just started again. So I think like that's where I sort of go with, we have to get better at this mini test mentality, which is like go test lots of little things, but then when you find the thing that you want, put the chips in, rather than like taking this approach which ends up being in the middle ground. Or if we build things that people half want that half work, that don't make any money, and by the time we've got them out there, somebody's got bored and moved on.
Wow, I can imagine being on that project team, rolling out something new, and yeah, it's like, great, look at what we've built, and it's something that nobody wants. It's out of date, and for those who are listening, this might resonate with you, but whether you're in a leadership position in product or in HR, we're thinking about new processes and new ideas. Like this mindset of mini tests, I like it. I haven't heard it. I'm going to go and now research this because that's what I like to do. But it's something that that I think we need to be doing. instead of just gathering some requirements and disappearing for 3 months and then coming up with something that actually isn't what people want. So how do we shift our workplace cultures into this more in this preparation phase? So out of this idea of, oh, we'll just repair it later, but into this preparation phase. I think back in my career, I studied business operations. And when we were looking at improving a process, 80% of our time was spent in that design phase, gathering requirements, asking questions, interviews, root cause before we even attempt to design something new. But so often we don't have time for that. Just go and implement something. So how do we shift our organizations?
I think one example of that is companies don't like talking to their customers very often.
Hmm.
Actually, they do, but they do it through like surveys. There's a guy called John Sills, his newsletter on it was great last week with all these examples of like companies who are addicted to surveys, because there's a research manager there that's going like, we asked 11 customers, we put a survey out to customers, here's the score that we got, and we can quantify this thing, but it never has the context of why. There's some of the examples where you get like a survey from like the someone from Air Canada the other day. It's like, do this survey, it'll only take you 14 minutes to complete it. And like, do I get anything for this? Like, it's totally, I haven't been on an Air Canada flight since August. It's totally out of the context of anything. Like, I'm not even thinking about flying Air Canada at the moment. So I think like there's companies that have done that and they've got a bit to do. When they start to realize the areas of their ways and they swing back towards qualitative research. I do a lot of that. It's really good for my business. Full disclosure, I love talking to your customers. Pick up the phone, pay me some money, I'll happily go do it and come back with a lot of ideas. But like one of my clients at the moment is, I can bring you in and we can go talk to customers and you can go talk to my customers for me. But I really want my team talking to customers. So this idea of encouraging companies to go to their customers, rewarding employees for doing so, then actually doing something with the information that they get. So I think like one way of really shifting that is everybody in any organization should be out testing what their customers think and talking about it, seeing how it works in the real world. I was out for drinks with a guy who works for a drinks company last week, and when he was making his drinks order, he was like, and what do you make that cocktail with? And they explained it's not his company's product. He's like, why would you not use my company's product for that? And they gave a bit of an explanation behind it, perfectly reasonable explanation. He's like, cool, can you make my drink with my company's product? I think there's a lot from that interaction with a server. Nobody rewards and incentivizes that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a really good way to shift mentality in actually doesn't have to be a large business, any business. Going and spending time talking to customers. Because once you start doing that, it's addictive. You don't stop. And that's where you sort of shift from being like, here's the requirements, go build it. If you're in a mode of constant discovery, when the world changes, you're more aware to it. Or you pick up the signals of where the world is going. And it might be that the feature that did not make sense building 8 months ago suddenly does. So you go build it. So I think that that's a really interesting way for companies to combat that.
Yeah, I love it. It's picking up the phone. Man, I was reminiscing. I've got a young son, and I was reminiscing and chatting with him about the phone back in my day, and how we actually used a phone to talk to people, not just use our fingers to talk to people. And something that my 8-year-old just doesn't understand, but there's power in it. And I know this from even recent experience at our organization. We've got an online community, and we're thinking about next product and product ideas and just engagement ideas. So at first, the idea that came to me was, hey, we'll send out a survey. Like, we've done that. And I think we garnered some great insight out of the survey. I think we asked some really good questions, but why don't we get on a phone? And sure, we'll buy people some virtual coffees. And I know we do this at one of our sister sites as well. And so far we've only had 2 conversations, but I've learned more in those 2 conversations about our product and it actually challenged some of my assumptions that I was quite surprised about. And it's just 2 conversations, and somebody might be listening going, oh, that's not enough data. Well, it takes time, right? You got to carve out time to have these conversations. But I even think about internally, I was I've had an opportunity to run numerous teams, and we think, oh, we're going to introduce a new process. Well, I'm guilty of this. I don't ask, we just do.
Mhm.
And then it just throws everybody off. But what if we crowdsource an idea? What if we just ask, hey, I'm exploring how we, I don't know, track our time. What works? What doesn't work for you? Let's understand that.
I remember like working with one client, and it's a financial institution in Alberta called ATB. And I don't know, I've probably been in their office like about a week and a half as a consultant. But this guy just like comes down and sits in the little space where we were borrowing a desk. He goes, "What do you do?" I'm like, I'm Iain, but with a company called RIT, we're designing on, well, like in a research phase of this project. He's like, "Tell me what you've learned." We just put talking to him a bit longer about work. Like, really engaging guy with asking questions. And when I got a little bit of a break, I was like, "What do you do?" He's like, "I'm the CEO." I was like, "What keeps you busy?" He's like, "This." And he just wanders around. Well, I'm sure he did lots of the CEO type stuff, but he's dedicated chunks of his day to go and engage with the staff and the vendors and the customers. I learned that when they had a big technology implementation that went wrong and it meant a lot of customers struggled to access their online banking, he went on the radio and said, "Here's my phone number." And so customers were calling him, probably giving him all sorts of shit that they couldn't access their money and how much of a terrible bank they were. And I'm sure he couldn't solve all of it, but like the man at the top was listening to the people that ultimately trusted him with their money. That's infectious. Not many organizations have a leader at the top like that will actually go out and engage with their customers, engage with their teams. And when they do, those organizations are really successful. I think of like the Virgin brand, like Richard Branson, the man isn't a great entrepreneurial visionary. He probably wasn't in the 70s when he did record stores and was trying to like compete with British Airways with planes. But like what the Virgin brand became was like this rebellious brand that once stood out to a generation of customers. I don't think it stands out to young people anymore. But people who work for Virgin went above and beyond to care for and engage with and understand their customer, and it showed in their products. Like Virgin Atlantic is a better airline to fly on as a passenger than British Airways. Virgin Money has way more personality as a bank than Lloyd's. Like their trains were fun. Like they even had everything from the announcements to what they put on the side of the train to the food they had. Like they went above and beyond. And they all came from understanding like if they understood their customers' personalities, the brand could then have personality. And I think that's a good way of like staying on trend, staying ahead of things. And most big businesses aren't good at that. So maybe that's how we bring it back to leadership. If the leader at the top is coming away and doing those things, it's a sign that everybody else should be doing it too.
I think that's how we truly empower our teams and our people, and just carving out that time in our weeks, in our days of not just saving it for a monthly sync up or whatever it is, or review, but just asking, what's keeping you up at night? Asking our teams that. I know a great leader always asks his team that. Asks, hey, what's going on? Not how are you, but what's keeping you up at night? And when we even ask our customers, it's not necessarily asking them what's keeping them up at night, but just getting rich insights and having those conversations and allowing time for that. When I led a sales team many years ago, I wanted everyone on our sales team to know what our customers loved about us and hated about us. And so part of we didn't script out sales calls. We tried that, but I'm not the biggest fan of that. So we personalized it, and sure, we'd send out surveys to everybody, but the team was empowered to go and ask questions. Hey, what could we be doing better? And we found some rich insights. Like we were packaging individual products in cardboard, and they're like, "Oh, we order 1,000 at a time and we end up with these 1,000 boxes." It's like, okay, let's bring that to product management, product development. Let's try to redesign something. And it worked. But your internal teams have so many rich insights just about your customers, whether it's an internal customer or external customer.
To bring you back to the work thing, I think I was thinking about this earlier. The CEOs who did this really well were the CEOs who engaged with like So that Dave guy at ATB, he wasn't the CEO during the pandemic, but like the organizations that are really good at understanding what the world of work looks like into the future, they spend their time with, they've been on video calls with junior employees, or like not even junior, but like not senior execs. And they've seen that they're working from beds, or like they've seen that they're working from sofas, they've got kids in the background, there's pets getting into video calls. And I think like those execs have looked at it and gone, hang on, my world's a bit different here. Whereas if you have the people that only like don't engage with their teams so much and spend more time, they earn a lot of money, they live in a bigger house. They spend time with their colleagues who earn a lot of money and live in a bigger house. Who don't, or like they can go to the office before like the rest of the team is back in the office because they have a corner office and they can spend their time in that all day. The ones who engage with the people that have seen what the real world of work's look like for the last couple of years, I think they've done an amazing, like they'll build great cultures that are preparing for the future because they recognize working from home can be quite nice, can be a bit stressful. And balance those two worlds out, you build a good culture for the future. There's got to be a correlation between the ones that are in their ivory towers in the physical world, in the ivory towers in the virtual world, and everybody leaving because they don't want to go back to an office 9 to 5 or be told what days they have to go in or whatever it might be. So I think that that's a really interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, that's that is. I didn't make that connection, and I'm glad you brought it back to that because when we think about the future work and building a better world of work, yeah, it's interesting that the companies who are doing it and doing it well, um, I'm guessing, and this is totally hypothesis, have paid attention. Where are you working? Where are you working from? Hey, your background's always blurred. Let unblur that for a minute. And it's like, oh, I'm working beside, a sink full of dirty dishes, or, you know, you fill in the blank. And I was having a conversation with somebody who recently started a fully remote job, and one of the most extroverted people I know, and is really struggling. Been at this job for 5 weeks and is going like, I need to talk to people. And so she was going to explore, hey, maybe the company supports a WeWork or a workspace where, sure, I'll be amongst strangers, but at least I'll get the energy from people.
I think the WeWork thing's interesting. I can't decide if they're going to do really well on after this or not, but like the whole entirely remote thing, I think you can do a lot of work remotely. It kills my brain, but I have to just point to like, okay, I've just been at home too much. I have to get out. But it's like loads of really interesting companies that are going, okay, we are fully remote. You can work from wherever you want. It's going to work like this. But every 3 months, this company is getting together and we're going to put you on a plane. You're going to fly to wherever we decide to be, but we are dedicated and we are there for that period of time. And if you can't do that, you can't work here.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. I don't know if that model's going to work. I don't know if it'll fly. Maybe it only works with little agencies and consultancies. Who knows? But yeah, experimenting, that's going to be interesting. I can't imagine a TD bank doing that, but
yeah, shutting down a banking system for an entire week. But there's companies. Tech companies have been doing this for quite some time. I think of Zapier and reading a story about what they do, and they're hundreds and hundreds of employees, fully remote. I remember hearing the CEO talk once here in Vancouver, and he was saying like they don't have an office. I think they have an office for because they need an address, but that's about it. Or they might meet a investor or a partner or something. But numerous times throughout the year, they bring everybody together, hundreds of people, and that's their culture. And yeah, how this adapts to the banking industry or the hospital industry or healthcare. Who knows? But that's going to be fun to think about. Like, how can it actually? And what I'm getting out of this conversation, Iain, is, how do we prepare for this? Let's just have some conversations. Let's sit down, buy your team member a coffee, whether they're a bank teller or a frontline nurse. Carve out 15 minutes, ask them what's working, what's not working. What would their ideal be? It's like, oh, we need to do shift work. It's got to be, 4 days on, a couple days off, and then you're working afternoon shift and then evening shift, and is that going to work? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it'd be fun to have those conversations.
There was a show I used to like when I was pretty on TV when I was a kid. It was called Back to the Floor. So it was like a UK show, and I'm sure that it probably like Undercover Boss, whatever the North American version is, but it was like it wasn't actually undercover. So the episode I remember is with the Burger King CEO. So Burger King in the UK really struggled for a long period of time, and they hired a French food CEO to become the CEO of Burger King UK. He was really French. He goes on the show, and he's like manning a fryer. He's manning the till. Like he's clearing the floors of a Burger King. But he's talking to the staff about like what it's like to work there. And like I saw this show. It must have been like 18 years ago now. I could look up to see how when it originally came out. But that sticks in my head. It was like this guy like did not understand the people who worked in his team at the very shop floor level. And then he spent like 2 weeks there. And at the end of the 2 weeks, they're like, well, what are you changing? He changed a ton of stuff. He's like, I'm changing how we hire. I'm changing how people get paid. I'm changing how we make the burgers. I'm changing how I'm enforcing different things with cleanliness. There was all sorts of stuff that he did. But like, at the end of the day, I think like so much of business comes down to that. If you don't understand people who are doing the work for you, then you're screwed.
Absolutely. It's here. I think the North American version of that is Undercover Boss. Same thing where, the CEO, or it's usually the CEO or founder, just, puts on a disguise and goes in and is working in the organization and uncovers so much that's going on. And sure, maybe you're listening to this going, I've only a company of 5 people. Yeah, you can't put on a disguise and go undercover, but what you can do is take some customers out for lunch, buy them a virtual coffee, take your team out for lunch and just unpack. And, as we look to wrap up our conversation, I think about, that one thing somebody can do today, and maybe that's it, or maybe you have something else, Iain, but what's somebody who's listening today, maybe they're inspired to go and drive some change. Maybe you're a leader or an individual contributor somewhere in the organization. What can you do? Where can you start?
I think a lot of it is just that go talk to customers, go talk to employees, go spend time with like normal people. And it doesn't all come at once. Like rather than trying to force it too hard, but just spending time with the observations. If you do that, then everything you do starts to become based upon what people want and how do I make it fit the model that exists today, versus trying to like go, what can I do and how do I cram that in? I teach a lot of companies on how to do good customer insight. I actually think the best companies in the world they start by being customer led, and they eventually become they recognize the product mentality that can come into that. Whereas like a lot of other organizations start with, well, what can we make and how do we make people want it? And the example I always use, and it's still a favorite of mine, is like the Colgate beef lasagna. If you've ever seen it, and there's an online museum called the Museum of Failure, but Colgate, when our brand, the research showed by doing surveys that Colgate was a brand that was associated with healthy products. So their extension became, we're going to do a line of ready meals with the Colgate brand on it because we're known for being healthy, and that'll be our thing. Yeah, I totally associate Colgate with healthy stuff, but I associate it with the minty fresh feeling in the morning and at night before I go to bed. So Colgate lasagna apparently sold really, really well in New Hampshire and Maine and nowhere else. But it's a great example of because we can doesn't mean because we should. And I think that mentality of go understand what customers want, go really deep with them. And it doesn't have to be just be customers, it can be employees. And if we understand that, then we'll design really good things off the back of it. I think we've had several years where organizations have not done that. And I think it's becoming cool again, which helps me because that's what I do for a living. But I really feel at the moment of those are the questions I'm being asked. And I admire the companies that take that approach because it's not easy. It's easy to go talk to customers. It's not easy to know what to do with it next, but if you don't do it, you'll never know what to do.
Yeah, it's step one, you got to talk to people. Step two is you've got a lot of rich insights. Now go and figure out what to do with it. And if you don't, contact Iain. We'll put his email and his company in the show notes.
Can I throw in a thing I thought? I don't know when we're making a thing out of something that doesn't quite fit, but the Ukrainian president.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the line he gave of I don't need a ride, I need ammunition. But as a leader, in terms of what does leadership look like, that guy was former comedian, was on Dancing with the Stars, the Ukrainian version. Also learned he was the voice of Paddington in the Ukrainian dub of the Paddington movies. Like, that man is not a president. Like, people do not become president based upon that career, unless you're Donald Trump or Reagan, but we'll forget that. But it's like most people in jobs, as they work their way up, like the things that made them successful at the jobs as they work their way through the ladder, and not necessarily the things that you need to be as a senior leader, CEO, politician, etc. I think he's a great example of its traits and ways of thinking about the world and behaviors that make him, at the moment, he's got to be the greatest leader in the world, because I wouldn't know what to do in his situation.
Yeah.
But like, if I was a Ukrainian in Ukraine, I wouldn't be fleeing, I'd be fighting, probably because I'm watching what that guy's doing. And I think like I don't know how anybody applies that to their own situation, because I can't imagine what that man's going through. But it's a great example of like, to me, that's leadership. I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. It feels like the right thing, and I have to take other people with me. If you do that really well, then you're a great leader. Like wandering around the streets of Kiev on Saturday morning.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you brought that up. And yeah, when I think of leadership and all the reading that I'm doing right now, just about the world of work and just the world in general, and that line really stood out to me recently is, I don't need a ride, I need ammunition. And that to me it's a servant leader, somebody who is leading by that example. So yeah, if you're listening today and struggling with, okay, what does it mean to be a leader? There you go. But also, what do I do? What do you do in your organization to, instead of just repairing things, because that's not fun, that gets exhausting, but how do you prepare? I mean, you can only prepare as much as you can, and you can't foresee what's going to happen in an hour. I have no idea what's going to happen in an hour. I look at my calendar and something might come up. I don't know what's going to happen. But how do we best prepare? And one thing is yeah, let's just get out and talk to people. Have conversation. Have some meaningful conversations. What do your customers love about you and hate about you? What do your employees love about you and hate about you? How, if your organization's going through turmoil, how will you stand up as a leader as well?
Can I share one really fun technique that I use?
Oh, yes, please.
I'll share the full story, but like years ago, I was doing some work with a lottery corporation, and it was all around like sports betting. And like, so they knew Canada was going to legalize sports betting, like single event betting. And they knew when that happened, and it's happening right now, that they would be in big trouble, because Paddy Power, Bet365, Skype, all those big players could come into the Canadian market, having done it in Europe, and come do it here. These guys wouldn't, well, okay, we're going to design what our proposition could be pre-legalization. This was 2015 or 16, 6 years have gone by. But they're now in a really good state to do it. We held a co-creation session where we invited 8 players of Proline. We didn't have any incentive to pay for them. So we just said, hey, we found 8 guys who like playing Proline, and brought them into the office after hours. And they all walked in with their hats. We gave them some Proline, so they all took off their Patriots, Habs, Leafs hats, and put on these like Proline hats. And then we said, write an obituary to this brand. And they wrote the most cutting, funny, like sometimes a little bit too painful, like newspaper obituaries to a brand that they loved. And then one of the guys was referencing how like Proline was effectively his mistress, because he was hiding money away from his wife, because he just had to know how much he was betting on it.
Oh man.
But that led to a really great idea around how could these people best play this game by so we built like an app that like mixed with an in-store experience, so they could like pick their Proline, make their picks on their phone, go to the store, can't scan the QR code, and then hand over cash to get the tickets, so blending the digital and the physical realms. They were preparing. They knew that like the platform wouldn't burn for 5 or 6 years, but they knew it was coming. And one of the techniques that we used to really deeply understand their customers and who used it at the time was we pretended it died and wrote an obituary. And that was a great way of getting insight. So something I kind of like doing with companies that want to go talk to their customers, go ask their customers how their brand will die and how they'll be remembered.
Oh man, I'd love to hear some of those stories, but there you go. There's some free consulting from Iain on getting insights from your customers, whether it's even internal or external. It's hey, I just think of like translating that to internal. It's like if you were to get a job offer, what would you say in an exit interview? And that might be a little scary, but hey, it's just gather those insights because somebody might be looking for your talent, but. Iain, it's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I think we could probably go on for a couple hours, and but yeah, I appreciate you coming on. And for those who are listening, please check out the show notes. We will put a link into Iain's LinkedIn as well as his company if you want to get a hold of him. If you're looking for help, consulting help and innovation, whether it's internal or external, Iain's your person to go and talk to. So. Iain, thanks again for coming on. And for those, again, who are listening, we'd love to get your feedback. Please let us know your thoughts about this episode and please subscribe. We love it if we can get this episode right into your platform. So thanks again and hope you have an amazing day.